the first college lecture for 2022. And this is a sort of a theme started by the current council headed by Dr. Gyana Bevardhana last year. And interestingly, the very first college lecture last year was also conducted by Professor Raveen Hanwella. So we're extremely grateful for him for joining. All of you know about Professor Hanwella, so I won't go into too much detail, but he's the chair and senior professor of psychiatry in the Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo. He is also a former president of the Sri Lanka College of Psychiatrists, and from an exam point of view, more importantly, one of the chairmen of the presidents of the Board of Study in Psychiatry and a chief examiner for many years, and he was the chief examiner when I did my exam as well, so you can imagine how senior he is. In addition to that, he has authored almost 107 papers, which have 1,619 citations with an H index of 21 and an I-10 index of 37. He has also authored 6 books. And in addition to that, if I just may say, the moment the college extended the invitation, Professor Hanwella immediately agreed. He replied with topics, he gave instructions on how to do this, specifically told the times, though it's a Sunday afternoon in Australia, and that professionalism and dedication to teaching trainees in psychiatry and helping Sri Lankan psychiatry is greatly admired and something I think all of us can learn a lot from. So thank you once again, sir, and over to you.
Can I share?
Yes, sir. Now you can share the slides.
Okay, right. Give a sec. Okay, I want to share a part of my screen. Let's see. Okay. I can share after I go. Wait, give me a sec. Okay, can you see my slide? Samar?
Yes, sir. It's clear.
Okay, clear. Okay, fine. Okay, let's get going. Now, a few things. I asked some of my trainees to kind of get prepared with an outline and an essay, but can I just ask you not to worry? I won't be asking you to put it up because what I thought of that might disrupt the flow. What we might do is at the end of this, if the trainers can take on the task, I would suggest that if the trainers can kind of have a day when they do take up the essay writing and perhaps get them to write up some essays maybe once a month and get them to do it in the format that we are going to discuss today, okay? And if you can do that maybe over the next couple of months, that would be far better than trying to get people to upload today and get anxious and get into trouble. And also it will disrupt the flow of the lecture. So I'm sorry, I'm going to change the format. I will be going without interruptions, right? Okay, I think that's better. It's very difficult in a big group for people to suddenly put up their essays and it's a bit embarrassing for them. So what I thought, okay, hold on. I will do for our registrars. I will take them individually and take them through this, okay, in a small group. Can the others also do the same? Because it has to be done for all the trainings, okay? And it's best done in a small group, not in a big group. So just follow the what you're going to learn today, okay? And I think we'll all be fine. Okay, let's get going with the lecture. So, right, so that's my avatar for today. Doesn't look like me, but anyway, I thought it looks better than me. Right, just a short video to start you all off.
Vandranayaka's tomb here on the Kandy Road has become a shrine for the nation's tributes and prayers, and he is regarded as a martyr. The man who shot him is allegedly a monk, and a wave of popular feeling against the monks followed the murder. But a new extremist Buddhist party has been formed to fight the elections. The chief monk was right. He cannot control them all. At his official residence, I also met the new caretaker Prime Minister, Mr. Dayanayaka. Mr. Dayanayaka, in your view, what's the reason for Ceylon's political instability?
I believe that we are yet in a formative stage, and that during the past 3 years, we have had a lot of upheavals, and now the country is trying to steady itself.
I've heard it said that some politicians in Ceylon, not yourself of course, are a bit corrupt and dishonest. Do you think that's true?
I suppose that is true of every country.
Yes. What can be done about it in Ceylon?
Well, we are taking all possible steps. We have a bribery commission. We have a parliamentary bribery commission. And we have invited various people to come and place evidence before these commissions.
Would you agree that Ceylon badly needs foreign investment, but that all these recent political troubles have been frightening it away?
Yes, I think that Ceylon badly needs foreign investments, and certain disturbances like continuous strikes, loose talk about nationalization have frightened away foreign capital. And now we have got to live down that and make the position more secure for foreign capital.
If you're elected Prime Minister again, will you do anything to stop all these strikes in Colombo docks?
I shall take all necessary measures.
What?
To prevent useless strikes and to prevent political strikes. Many of the strikes that have taken place in Ceylon in the past are political strikes that have been engineered by politicians. I have no objections to strikes through which workers express their legitimate grievances. But I certainly think that political strikes do a lot of harm to the country.
Do you believe in Buddhist monks taking part in politics?
I would not give an unequivocal reply. That will depend on the circumstances and on each case. I would not be responsible for a ban, nor would I go out of the way to encourage them to come.
All right, well, wondering why I showed this video. That was Dr. W. Dayanayaka. He came from Richmond College School, I think, and came to my old school, St. Thomas's. See how well he spoke with clarity and style. Okay, I think that's the lesson here. I don't want to make any political statements, but yeah, he was briefly the Prime Minister. Okay, right. So even in those days, I think there were some people who could speak with clarity. I think recently in the media, there were some comments on lack of clarity, I suppose. Right, okay. So it's important. English is important. And here we have the most, well, it is said it is the most famous paper in science. I don't know if you can read it, but I think you might be able to actually. It published in Nature in 1953, just one page. And of course, it's by two people you know well, Watson and Crick. It was their publication of the structure of the DNA molecule. See how simply they start. Almost apologetic. We wish to suggest the structure for the salt of deoxyribose nucleic acid, DNA. The structure has novel features which are of considerable biological interest. Right. So that's how they start the most important paper ever published in science. Okay. See how clear and well written. But if you go through this paper later at leisure, you will find that it's well written all the way through. Right. Now, just a question. I'm not going to wait for your answer, but just think of the answer. What do you think is the most common type of written assignment that students are required to do at a university level? I think this will hold true even for Sri Lanka. Is it a practical report discussing the results of experiment, a critique, a case study, or argumentative essay, as it's called, right? Writing persuasively about a topic. Now, a study showed that these are the kind of percentages. So you would see that nearly half of essays are what we call the argumentative essay. In other words, it's also called argumentative academic essay. Okay. So my talk will focus on that. I will briefly look into the other types of reports and writing as well, which are important for academic, but I will concentrate on the last one, which is what you call the argumentative academic essay. And that, in fact, is the requirement we have for the MD Part 2 long essay. Well, it's not the Part 2 anymore, it's called the MD. The MD long essay is the argumentative academic essay. And the objective of that is to kind of train you in logically and rationally arguing a point of view. I think that was the original intention when we put in the long essay. So that's what we are going to concentrate on today. However, as academics, we have other needs of writing as well. For example, when you write a paper, or for the senior registrars, it would be writing a dissertation. I think it's their biggest challenge now, or the case book. And as academics, people have to write papers for publication. So in all these areas, your skills of writing would be a necessity and an advantage if you do it well. And of course, it goes without saying, the sound knowledge of grammar is essential for writing a good essay. Now, today I'm not going to teach you grammar, but that's something you'll have to do by yourself. However, I will briefly touch on what a good paragraph is, okay? And kind of few things about clarity in sentences. However, I would encourage you to go through a good writing course and get your knowledge of English up if you already don't have such knowledge. I will give you some references at the end, okay? So in the hope of this next an hour or so, I hope to cover these points. What is an argumentative academic essay? Writing clear sentences, writing clear paragraphs. How to choose an essay topic, constructing essay. I will briefly touch on the Peel method, beginning and ending essay, academic language, and something you have never probably heard of, called Metadiscourse, and how to formulate a corpus query. Okay, referencing, writing an effective summary, editing and proofreading. So these are the requirements you have for a writer. Okay, so let's get on with it. Well, firstly, you must be able to write a clear sentence. That's why everything begins. However, I'm not going to do sentence writing now. That will take too much time. However, a few things about clear sentences, a few basic things, 6 things you can remember and perhaps make use of. One is called redundancy. The technical term for this is tautology. And you would see quite a bit of this, not only academic writing, but it's quite common in the social media, I suppose. Not the place to learn English, of course. A few things like, 10 p.m. at night, our final conclusion, the month of June. These are redundant. You don't need to say the month of June. June is a month anyway. So June. You don't say our final conclusion. Conclusion is final. So our conclusion. Combine together. Combine means together anyway. So you just say combine. Okay, right. Okay. So things like that. Is it important? Well, it's a matter of being stylish in your language. Okay. And also wordy phrases like, it's looking through a dissertation. These things are very common. Based on the fact that. Why do you want to say based on the fact that? Just say because. During the course of. You can say during. In the final analysis. Just say finally, like, Right, okay. Third point, make your subject clear and defined. For example, here the practice of revision would improve our writing. Not very clear. Revision would improve our writing. That is clear. Okay. Avoid empty subjects. For example, they are called expletives. Expletives are not bad words. Empty. There's no way to become a better writer than to practice. That's empty because there's no subject there. If you define, we can become better writers if we practice. That's better. Right. Okay. Use strong words. Avoid sentences that rely overly on some form of the word to be. No time to explain this, but just look it up later. Okay. For example, what we found was a solution to the problem. That's a weak one. Strong is we solve the problem. Okay, that's a strong verb. And how much nicer does it sound like? Better. Vague words like thing, stuff, material, people, get, did. You can replace this with some precise nouns. Okay. For example, I needed to get some stuff at the store. What do you mean by stuff? I need to buy some groceries at the farmer's market. Be specific. Don't use non-specific words. Okay. Right. Last step, avoid unnecessary modifiers. Okay. For example, in my opinion, that movie was really quite good. I am very glad we saw it. Concise. The movie was fantastic. I'm glad we saw it. You see a lot of this again. Very nice, very true. These are all unnecessary modifiers which you can do away with. Okay. So trim them off. I don't know if you heard of George Orwell. He was the writer who wrote Animal Farm in 1984. And he, in his wonderful essay called Politics and the English Language, I would urge all of you to read it. It's available on the internet. He gave 5 rules for clear writing. He said, never use a metaphor, simile, or other figure of speech, which are used to saying. Use something new. Don't use something that has been hacked to pieces. Okay. Never use a long word where a short one will do. If possible to cut a word out, cut it out. Never use the passive when you can use the active. Never use a foreign phrase, a scientific word, or a jargon word if you can think of everyday English equivalent. Okay. And lastly, break the rules sooner than say anything outright barbarous. Okay. So once you are proficient, you can break the rules. Right. So I think if you follow these simple rules, your writing will improve immensely. But again, it's not as easy as you think. So learn to spot out these errors when you read papers and things. Okay. Right. Now, let's get to a paragraph. That's the most important unit of essay. A collection of sentences form a paragraph. So that's a very brief definition. Let's listen to a short video on what a paragraph is. We have to get this right. Once you get our paragraph correct, then your essay will fall into place. Okay. Right. So let's see what a paragraph is.
In this video, I'm going to answer the question, what is a paragraph? And to answer questions like, how long should a paragraph be? And what are the different parts of a paragraph? Okay, let's start with a definition for paragraph. A paragraph is a distinct section of writing covering one topic. Now, it's the word topic that is the challenge here, because the topic might be an atom, or the topic might be the entire solar system, or one aspect about one of those points. So just bear in mind that the scope of the word topic is very broad. But to give you a sense for what a paragraph is, a typical paragraph is about 5 sentences. But that is by no means a rule. Let's look at a paragraph. Here is one about the Pilgrim Fathers. Let's count the sentences in this one. Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Well, of course, I did that on purpose. But there doesn't have to be 5. There could be more, there could be fewer. But look at the colours. The first sentence is in green, the last sentence is in red, and the middle ones are in grey. There's a reason for that. The first sentence in a paragraph is called the topic sentence, and it tells the reader what the paragraph is about. The next sentences, and it might be 1, or it might be 2, or it might be 3, or it might be more, are called the detail sentences, and you use the detail sentences to elaborate on the topic sentence. And then finally, you have the concluding sentence. This is the final sentence that offers a conclusion. Notice I called it the concluding sentence, not a summarizing sentence. It is not there to summarize everything that you've said. It is there to conclude. So they are the main parts of a paragraph. Okay, let's get rid of that. It's worth just pointing out that sometimes paragraphs are indented, like this. Or sometimes they are numbered, especially in business documents. Let's just get rid of all that colouring. Look at this paragraph. This one has a title, and it's a summarising title. This practice is particularly common in business writing. It allows busy executives to skim read the paragraphs, or to focus on the paragraphs they want to read in more detail. You could have single word paragraph titles like this, but that's not recommended. Far better is to give a summarising title. The project will be 10% over budget. And then the busy executives can read the detail if they need to. Remember, this is a common practice in business writing, where writing summarising paragraph titles is a real skill. I want to leave you with this picture. A paragraph, a distinct section of writing covering one topic. There will be about 5 sentences. The first one will be the topic sentence, telling you what it's about. Underneath the topic sentence will be the detail sentences, elaborating on the topic, and then a concluding sentence, not a summarising sentence. That's all. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so that's...
Be sure to check out some of our other videos on grammar.
Yes, I'll give you the reference later.
In this video, I'm going to...
Right, ignore this for the moment. A paragraph is very important. The first sentence is the summarizing sentence. And in fact, when as examiners, when we examine an essay, we just first we scan through the first sentence of your paragraphs, okay? And if it makes sense, then we go into the details. So make sure that each of your paragraphs are in this order, and therefore the essay would be structured correctly and would be readable. Even in a book, we do that, don't we? When we are in a hurry, we sometimes don't go through the entire paragraph in a book. We look at the first sentence, and then if it's important, we may read the whole paragraph, or we might even go to the next paragraph. Also, you might be thinking, hang on, do examiners not read word for word? Well, we don't. Sometimes you can't even read word for word because they are not legible. But so make sure your essays are structured properly, especially your long essay, which is 1 hour and would cover several pages. Otherwise, it's quite taxing for us as well. Okay, now we go on to another important point. This is called a thesis statement, okay? And this is special for argumentative academic essays. So what is a thesis statement? Right, let's listen to this video, and that will clarify for you what a thesis statement is, right? Okay.
When writing your introductory paragraph, your thesis statement is critical. So, what is it? Your thesis statement is a single sentence that informs the reader of the main arguments of your essay. It essentially tells the reader what you are trying to convince them of in the body of the essay. As the writer, it also helps to focus your search for information and to organize your ideas. So what makes a good thesis statement? First of all, it should be comprised of a single idea that forms the basis of your argument. Secondly, it should be clear and concise. And lastly, it should be argumentative. It should establish your position on your topic. These 3 things make an effective thesis statement. But how do you actually go about constructing it? Here are some tips. The first step is to choose your topic. What is something that you have a genuine interest about? Let's say it's volunteering. The second step is to start reading to help familiarize yourself with common discussions about the topic and begin brainstorming ideas for thesis statements. For example, you might consider questions like, is volunteering beneficial for university students? What is the influence on the social network of students taking part in volunteering? What is the impact on the academic performance of students participating in volunteering activities? The last step is to narrow your focus by adopting a position. Your position should be one that a reasonable person could disagree with. For example, your thesis statement might say, this essay argues that university students should participate in volunteering activities. This is a single idea that is clear and concise and is argumentative. A reasonable person may disagree with it, so you will then go on to support and defend your position with evidence, which will form the body paragraphs of your essay. We will look at those in the next video.
Okay, actually, I forgot to mention that this part is actually for the examiners who are setting the essay question. Because obviously the candidates cannot, well, they can choose from 3 titles, but they are not setting the question really. So the examiners have to decide what is a good question, which in effect is a thesis statement. Okay, that's an important thing. So good thesis statement must have a main argument. It's a single idea, clear and concise, argumentative. That's important. It should be something where somebody might disagree with that. It cannot be something that is obvious and everybody agrees with it. Then it is not a thesis statement. Okay. Right. So I have another video on the same thing, which is a bit clearer than that the video before. Okay. So this especially for the senior people who are going to set the long essay question. It's very important you get this right. Otherwise, the question will be faulty. And the candidates will be in difficulty because through no fault of their own. Of course, there are 3 topics, so one might be better than the other. However, we can get this right very easily with a few, if you follow a few principles.
Okay, so this week we're going to be talking about thesis statements and academic writing, especially those with an argument in them. The first thing you need to do when you're writing a thesis statement is establish your topic. Here are some example topics: the hunting of wolves in the Arctic, college entrance exams, or hybrid automobiles. Remember, these are not yet thesis statements. They are just topics or the main idea of a paper. In order to create a thesis, you have to add an argument or an opinion. It has to be a point of view that is arguable or open to interpretation. Here are some examples. You remember these topics from the previous slide. The hunting of wolves in the Arctic should be stopped because of the danger of the wolf's extinction. College entrance exams are not the best way to test a student's readiness for university study. Hybrid automobiles, while more environmentally friendly than traditional cars, still have serious environmental impacts because of manufacturing techniques. The parts in red, or the second part of each sentence, show the writer's opinion about the underlined topic. So how do you know if you have a good thesis? One way to test is to ask if someone could possibly disagree with your point of view. If everyone agrees with your ideas, you don't have a thesis. For example, as we saw in the previous slide, the hunting of wolves in the Arctic should be stopped because of the danger of the wolf's extinction. However, someone could have a different opinion about this. For example, the hunting of wolves in the Arctic should not be stopped because the population of wolves needs to be controlled. This is an alternate argument. If you can come up with an alternate argument, chances are you have a thesis. So what makes a good thesis statement? First, it's focused, right? It has a very clear point. It has just one main idea. Be careful about trying to put too many ideas into your thesis statement. It's specific. It says exactly what you're going to argue. And finally, as we just discussed, it's open to different interpretations. Look at this sample thesis statement and decide in your head whether it is or is not a thesis. My essay is about the problems in our healthcare system and how expensive it is. Okay, have you decided? Hopefully you chose no, this is not a thesis. This thesis announces a topic, but it doesn't create an argument or have a point of view. No one could disagree that your essay is about problems in the healthcare system. In addition, it actually has two separate ideas, so a better thesis here would be more focused. How about this? Is this a thesis statement? The growing popularity of crime shows on television shows the public's increasing acceptance of violence. Okay, what do you think? Yes or no? So actually, this one is a thesis statement. It shows a specific argument or a point of view about television crime shows. One way to test it, I could have a different opinion and say, no, crime shows are popular for an entirely different reason. Okay, let's try one more. Smoking should be banned on all college campuses as secondhand smoke and pollution cause health and environmental problems. Is this a thesis? Absolutely. This one has a strong argument. Someone would certainly disagree. One more. Since the beginning of time, people have wondered what causes a great society to decline and fall. Is that a thesis? Hopefully by now you recognize that this is not a thesis. This is an observation. That is, it's true. People have wondered this, but we don't get a sense of what the author thinks is the cause of the decline and fall of a great society. So here we have a list of 4 topics. Have a look at them, and in the discussion area linked here, complete these and make a good thesis.
Okay, so a thesis is actually a topic and an argument together. Okay, topic plus argument makes a thesis statement. And so basically it should have multiple views. There should be an alternative view that is possible. It should be important for the field of study. And there should be evidence available to support either way. Okay, so if these things are there, it's a thesis statement. And therefore, it's a good question for the MD essay paper. Now, Charmer has kindly sent me some past MD essay questions. Just quickly scan through and see whether these kind of, they are okay as a thesis statement. Okay, I'm not going to say anything more. Just have a look. So question 1, maternal mental health service in Sri Lanka, well developed. Critically analyze this statement and give your opinion. Well, I suppose the instructions are given, so some people might say, well, they are not developed. So I suppose it's a thesis statement and you can write about it as an argumentative essay. So likewise, the second one is also okay. Third one is okay. Let's look at another few more years. Yeah, I suppose psychiatrists are the main service providers in fulfilling mental health care. Discuss this statement. Yeah, okay, can pass as a thesis statement. Some might say, well, they are not the main service providers. So medication is the most effective way to treat schizophrenia. Well, again, debatable, so can be taken as a thesis statement. Right, so they're okay. Right, these are also okay. I just had been through. Right. Now, number one is probably not a thesis statement. Discuss the changing patterns in suicide and deliberate self-harm in Sri Lanka and the strategies for prevention. It just, well, you just write a description, that's it. So there is no debate, there is no other view on the subject. So that is not a thesis statement. It's okay as an essay question, but really, if I am the candidate, I would not attempt it because it just doesn't give you scope for argument and debate and to show your skills in debating, okay? Which is the idea is to test your knowledge and ability to do that, rather than looking how much you know about the suicide and deliberate self-harm in Sri Lanka. That is not the purpose of the long essay, okay? It's not to test your knowledge, in-depth knowledge of a certain area. No, it is not, okay? That was not the purpose of the long essay, and that is not why we set it. Right. Okay, so second one, discuss the impact of the duration. Right, again, not a thesis. So the first two are not thesis statements and therefore probably are not suitable as long essay questions. So that is not a good idea. Okay, psychotherapy is not relevant in the practice of psychiatry in Sri Lanka. Right, that's a thesis statement, because some might say, well, psychotherapy is relevant in the practice, and some might say it is not relevant. So you can debate it, so therefore you can answer that. Other two, well, not so good. Okay, right. So just this for the examiner. So next time when you set, just go through these principles and make sure that you set a good thesis topic thesis, so that the candidates have a fair chance and give it so they can give it a good go, and we can test their ability to write an argumentative essay. Right. Yeah, we can. Right. Okay. So basically, there are various models that are given for essay. So one is this famous hamburger. So people say that essay should have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, like the hamburger, and the meat is between the two sandwiches, as they say. Right. So just listen to a little video on how you structure an argumentative essay. Okay, how you structure your essay. Of course, it's a number of paragraphs, but then there's an order and a method to this.
Students at university are often required to produce assignments in a wide variety of genres. A study by Sheena Gardner and Hilary Nazy in 2013 found that of all assignment types that university students were required to write, the academic essay was by far the most common, accounting for 43% of all assignments produced. Being able to write an essay that is clear, concise, and well-structured is a central part of university life for most students. In this video, we are going to consider the overall structure of an essay. Later on, we will break the essay into smaller pieces to look at some of the parts more closely. So, what does an essay actually look like? A standard academic essay is usually structured as follows. An introductory paragraph where you introduce the topic of your essay. Body paragraphs where you present your arguments and evidence. And a concluding paragraph where you summarize your key points. Each of these three sections has its own purpose, so let's look at what each one contains. First, let's look at the introductory paragraph. Introductions generally open with some background information about the topic that gives some context to what will be discussed. These first few sentences often discuss why the topic of the essay is an important one and why the essay is worth reading. This is followed by what is called a thesis statement, which outlines the purpose of the essay or the question that the essay is trying to answer. Lastly, the introductory paragraph will finish by outlining the thesis map, which briefly tells the reader the main arguments that are going to be presented in the essay that follows. A strong introduction tells the reader what is going to be talked about and why the essay is worth reading. After the introduction, there will be a series of body paragraphs. The body paragraphs allow the writer to explain the support for their thesis statement in more detail. Each body paragraph should contain an argument in which the writer states why the thesis statement should be believed, supporting evidence, which refers to the work that others have done in the field, and a summary or recommendation that pulls the presented evidence together to present the argument in more detail. The body paragraphs act like a lawyer presenting their case in court. They present evidence that attempts to convince the hearers that their argument is worth supporting. The information presented in the body paragraphs is then summarized in the concluding paragraph. The conclusion clearly states the writer's stance or opinions about the thesis statement, and summarizes the arguments and evidence presented throughout the essay. The conclusion does not make any new argument or present new evidence. It ties the essay together by reflecting back on what has already been said. By completing the activities in this module, you should have a better idea about how to formulate an academic argument, and how to support and defend your arguments for better academic writing.
Okay, so basically the argumentative essay, it is not a single continuous stream of text, okay? It has three clear sections: the introduction, the body, and the concluding paragraph or paragraphs. The body may have about 5 paragraphs. It depends on the lecture, but on the essay. But I suppose for the MD, you all are writing a 1-hour essay. So I think the body should probably contain around, well, at least 5 or more paragraphs, okay? And the introduction and the last paragraph, the conclusion, that would be about 7 to 10 paragraphs, I suppose, for the essay. And this is a predictable structure, and so the examiners also know this structure. So we will probably look at the introduction and the conclusion, and then probably go back to the body. We may not read in the order that is given, right? Yeah, okay, let's what this says.
Sometimes when you're writing an assignment, it can be helpful to have a finished example to look at as a reference point. So let's have a look at an example essay we'll be using later in the module. Remember that an argumentative essay has 3 parts: an introductory paragraph, body paragraphs, and a concluding paragraph. The essay's introductory paragraph starts with general comments about the Zika virus. These are followed by the writer's thesis statement. This essay argues that the Australian government must urgently tackle the threat of the Zika virus across the country. At the end of the introduction, there is a thesis map, which explains the structure of the essay by outlining the contributing arguments that the writer is going to make in the body paragraphs. Next, let's take a look at the body paragraphs. There are 3 body paragraphs in this essay, 1 for each of the 3 contributing arguments. Note that for longer essays, however, each contributing argument could occupy 2 paragraphs or even 3. The first body paragraph deals with the first contributing argument, that the government should implement more comprehensive education programs to combat Zika in Australia. The second body paragraph deals with the second contributing argument, that research funding should be increased to help combat Zika in Australia. And the third paragraph deals with the third contributing argument, that new mosquito control programs should be introduced. Note that each of these arguments directly supports the thesis statement. This essay does not use counter-arguments, but if you do decide to introduce counter-arguments, a common way to do so is to have a counter-argument paragraph after the introduction and before the contributing arguments, or after the contributing arguments and before the conclusion. Note, however, that if you do include counter-arguments, you should finish the paragraph by refuting them with evidence to bring your reader back to your point of view. The essay's concluding paragraph repeats the writer's thesis statement using different phrasing, then recaps the main points that they used to support their thesis statement. You can also see that the writer does not introduce any new evidence. They just stick to summarizing their essay.
All right, so that's the example of an essay relevant to the Zika virus. Yeah, right, okay. So the introductory paragraph, the body, and the concluding paragraph. There's a kind of a, you may have heard of this Peel method of writing. Peel is actually an acronym for the same thing, but kind of, I suppose it might help you to remember this order better. So I just thought I'd introduce this. I mean, it doesn't have to be Peel, but well, let's have a look. It's a video, short video.
Today we are learning about Peel paragraphs, and our learning intention, I will learn what a Peel paragraph is and how to write one. What does Peel stand for? So P is our point, E is the evidence we're going to give to support that point. We're then going to explain that evidence, and we are going to link it back up to the main point we are trying to make. These are some examples, so different ways to look at it. The one on the right is slightly more complicated, although many of you are capable of doing that. So you say your point, you put in a quote to support your ideas, you evaluate the strengths or the weaknesses of that evidence, and then you link it back to the point you've made. So evaluating the strengths and the weaknesses of the evidence is like, this is a fact that I've given you, which means that it's very strong, or if it's just someone's opinion, it's not as strong. So why do we use this structure? It's because it's the simplest way to make sure you are getting all of the evidence across, your whole idea across in a concise way. Let's use this paragraph to figure out how to write a Peel paragraph. The Wahine disaster was one of the biggest New Zealand has ever seen. 51 people lost their lives that day. Another died several weeks later, and a 53rd victim died in 1990 from injuries sustained in the wreck. The shipwreck was caused by one of the biggest storms recorded in New Zealand. The huge number of people who lost their lives tells us this was one of New Zealand's biggest disasters. Right, so the point this paragraph is trying to make is that the Wahine disaster was one of the biggest. So obviously this topic is on disasters, and I have chosen the Wahine disaster to talk about. The evidence I have given is a quote from a book. It says 51 people lost their lives that day. Another died several weeks later, and a 53rd victim died in 1990 from injuries sustained during the wreck. I've then gone on to explain that point, saying how the shipwreck was caused, which was from one of the biggest storms recorded in New Zealand. And then I have linked it back up to my main point, saying the huge number of people who lost their lives tells us this was one of New Zealand's biggest disasters. This is a very simple paragraph. Your paragraph does not have to be complicated to be good. You need to make a very clear point. You need to then give evidence of that point, explain your evidence, and link it back to the point you are trying to make.
Okay, so here it is summarizing what she said just now. Okay, so if you look at the essay, this is how it would look like. This is another essay on government surveillance is harmful to citizens. That is the thesis. So there would be three basic arguments. Surveillance does not improve protection of citizens. There may be infringement on civil liberties. Information gathered by government may be obtained by other parties. And each of these would be supported by evidence. So you can see that this is how you would structure your essay. So I suppose if you are, you can do mind maps, and before you do an essay, maybe draw a structure of how we are going to do this on a piece of paper. That would be your outline of the essay, right? Always outline before you go to the writing of the essay. Don't try to just start and keep writing and hope that the thoughts will come to you. And otherwise, if you do that, our essay will be all over the place, and it would not really be a proper academic essay. Right. This is again a repetition of what I said before, so I'm going to go a bit faster now. When you are starting, I say, the introduction, you will have to demonstrate that this is an important point. So there are a few ways of doing that. For example, you can quote a statistic to show that this is a big problem. For example, if it's suicide, you can say like 10 million people commit, 1 million people commit suicide every year or something like that. Describe the effect that it has on human beings. Highlight a time sensitive and say, for example, if it's global warming, say that by a certain year, the sea will rise by 6 feet and cause problems. Describe how the topic is central within a broad area and raise a question that is worth knowing the answer to. So these are ways of highlighting the importance when you start an essay, okay? And then of course, very important to finish your essay strongly as well. And remember, when you finish essay, you don't put in new research, references or new information into the conclusion, okay? Don't do that. In the conclusion, you simply summarize and reinforce our stance. And you refer back to the thesis statement. So it's in a way connecting back to the beginning. And that will be your academic essay. Right. So this is an example of a concluding paragraph regarding the Zika virus. Okay. I won't spend too much time on that. Right. Okay. So in a way, I'm done with writing an academic essay, and the rest of it is some other bits of information on other aspects of essay writing. Okay, but still worth looking at. So the bulk of my topic is now done. So I'm just going on to some peripheral things which you may like to know. What do you mean by academic language? I think that's something.
Tone in academic writing is a term borrowed from music. In music, tone relates to the setting of the instrument so as to create a certain feeling or mood, and it's pretty similar for writing. You can see that sometimes things might be written in a light-hearted or informal tone, but you can also see that in academic writing, the tone of the language used is more formal. This distinction is important for effective communication and in building an appropriate professional relationship with the academic reader. Research has shown that teachers and tutors are particularly critical of student writing that does not conform to an academic tone. So it's really important to write appropriately for your intended academic audience. In order to maintain a good academic tone, there are a few key things to avoid. First, it's a good idea to avoid making very broad generalizations about the topic. For example, parents asking their children to pay rent is always wrong. It might well always be wrong, but we don't want to say it like that. Another tip is to avoid using sweeping adjectives. For example, the findings from previous research are obviously biased in favor of older people. A further tip is to avoid the use of overly emotional language. For example, oh, it's just heartbreaking to see the effects of this disease. Finally, another good tip is to avoid the use of inflammatory statements. For example, Smith's paper was terrible and he doesn't deserve to call himself a researcher. Let's take a look at an example of something written in an informal tone, and then take a look at how it can be improved to a more academic tone. Yo, when I got my students to think science was wicked cool, their test scores went through the roof. When I asked for their spin on the improvement, they just said the test felt like a piece of cake. Now here's the same information, but expressed in a more academic tone. When I was able to engage my students and get them interested in science, their test scores improved significantly. I asked a few students why they thought the scores had improved, and they admitted that the test seemed much easier. The activities contained in this module will help you to recognize the language features involved in maintaining a formal academic tone in your academic writing so as to meet the expectations of academic readers?
Okay, so these are the 4 things to look out for. Don't make generalizations. This is always wrong or something like that. Obviously, sweeping adjectives, appealing to emotion, inflammatory statements. Obviously, this is not, you don't learn this kind of language from the Facebook or the WhatsApp, I suppose, right? It's full of all these errors. So maybe look at it as what not to do rather than what to do. Right. Okay. We come to another term. I don't know if you have heard of this. It's called metadiscourse. But what do we mean by metadiscourse? Okay, that's also fairly important as an academic writer.
When constructing a piece of academic writing, there are times when you may want to explicitly signal to the reader exactly what it is that you're doing or thinking. You may wish, for example, to indicate that you're moving on to your next point, or that you are uncertain about how well a piece of evidence supports your thesis statement. We say that these sorts of signals to the reader are part of the metadiscourse of the text. Skillful writers use the tools of metadiscourse to convey their meaning to the reader more clearly, and they do this in 2 main ways. The first way is to provide signals to the reader about the organization and structure of the text. This involves using words and phrases that indicate some sort of change in the flow of the text. Let's look at a few examples. When making a series of points or arguments, you may wish to use sequencing markers like firstly, secondly, and finally. You can also use transition markers like as a result, or consequently, or on the other hand, that you can use to jump from sentence to sentence, from point to point, or from paragraph to paragraph. If you want to jump from one idea to another, you can flag this for the reader with a topic shift, like turning now to, or it is also important to consider. You can signal to the reader that a paragraph or section has a particular purpose with an announce goal. You can do this by saying something like, in this section, my aim is to. If you're citing the work of someone else, an evidential like, according to Smith in 2012, this can be used to indicate that you are about to present the ideas of another person. Finally, there are basic code glosses, like for instance and for example, that indicate to the reader that you're about to illustrate your argument with a specific case. Using these phrases can guide your reader through the entire text from beginning to end in a way that's coherent and easy to follow. The second type of metadiscourse is that in which you select and use phrases that explicitly signal your commitment or attitude towards the things that you're writing about. For example, when you want to strengthen your commitment to what you're trying to say, you might use boosting devices, such as obviously, clearly, and others. On the other hand, if you want to be more careful about the points that you're making in your writing, you might use a hedging device. These are expressions like, it is possible that, or this could be the reason why. Engagement markers are used when you want to urge the reader to take a specific action. To do this, you might use phrases such as, we need to, or the public needs to understand. Finally, you can self-insert into your writing using personal pronouns such as I, we, or our. It's a common misconception that these pronouns should be avoided in academic writing, but studies have shown that writers actually use these features a lot in published research when they want to strengthen the points that they are making. The activities in this section will help you improve your skills in the use of metadiscourse.
Okay, so that's about metadiscourse. I'm sure you all use this quite a lot, but I don't think you knew the term for that. Of course, my writing guru, academic guru, Professor Colvin, didn't like the term firstly, secondly, thirdly, like you used to say. Don't say that, that doesn't sound nice. Just say first, second, last. Come on, okay, much nicer. Right, and he didn't like things like however, subsequently, to cut out all those metadiscourse. Right, okay. Right, this is just a chart of metadiscourse. Let's skip through that. Right, sometimes we have a difficulty in finding words for things in a sentence. So what do we do when we have this difficulty? We look up it's something called a corpus. I don't think you've heard of that. You have heard of dictionaries, thesaurus, but this is something new. So let's have a look at that.
Even with the help of a grammar checker, sometimes it's not easy to know whether you are using a particular word correctly. In this video, I'm going to show you a tool that may help. Corpora are multi-million word collections of searchable electronic text. Using specialist software, we can query this text for the recurrent patterns and trends in that language data. Say, for example, you've used the sentence, "The demand of potatoes increased significantly," in your academic essay, and your teacher has indicated that this expression is incorrect. However, you are not sure how the sentence should be fixed. Doing a search in a corpus for the expression "the demand of" will give you information about its frequency in real academic writing. Looking here, you can see that this phrase is most often used to describe people doing the demanding. Potatoes aren't people, so these results indicate that I'm probably using the phrase incorrectly. The corpus can then be used to find out which word should go after the demand. In this case, the demand for potatoes. You can see that this phrase describes the thing that is being demanded, so potatoes does fit here. Learning how to consult an academic writing corpus will give you the kind of insights into academic language that are not available through traditional dictionaries or translation websites. These tools can boost your knowledge of academic writing, vocabulary, and grammar. The activities that you'll be doing in this section will teach you the basics of formulating corpus queries.
Okay, so this is a corpus query. For example, you have written this sentence: the evidence says that exposure to light from electronic devices shortly before bed decreases sleep quality. And you know that doesn't sound quite right. You know, is it correct to say the evidence says? Actually, I wanted to go to this corpus and show you how to do it, but if I do that, it will mess up the presentation. So I'm not going to do that, but do it on your own. There are so many corpora available. It's called corpus. So just Google English corpus and do the search. Okay. So what you do, you enter the evidence space asterisk space that, and then the corpus will tell you that the correct word is actually the evidence shows that exposure to blue light. So evidence shows is better. So this one is also doesn't sound right. It is important to see that almost all studies in this area have leaders in. C doesn't sound the correct word. So you can put in important to space asterisk space that, and then see what the corpus tells you, like, you know, and then you can find a better word for that. So that's just another tip for the academics, so to improve your writing. And this is from the British Academic Written English Corpus, BAWE. Some you have to pay, some you can register for free with your academic credentials. Okay, you can give your university identification and they'll give you a free registration. Right, okay. So time is pressing, so let's move on. Right, very briefly, very important to acknowledge the work of others. Often a problem we come across in dissertations, especially, of course, in your academic essay, we won't, I suppose, have plagiarism because you're not allowed to, I suppose, keep books with you. But however, in the dissertation and case books, this becomes a problem. Of course, the PGM now has software that will kind of let you know when you are taking too much from another person, but I thought I'll just touch on this. Now, what is plagiarism? It refers to the act of representing another person's work as their own. Okay, that you know. But you can use the work of others. You can use our own words. It must be a true reflection of the author's work, not something very distorted. And you must provide an in-text citation as well as a full reference. Okay, that's in an essay, not, of course, in the dissertation. I don't think we require that in-text citation. We just simply ask to put the number and the full reference. However, it's better if you can have the in-text citation as well. I think there's nothing to prevent you from doing that. It's clearer then, and the other way you have to keep flipping to the reference to see what you're talking about. Now here we have example. I just show one example. The following excerpt is from a 2003 study by Sothout and Steele. The amount of time female owls were allocated to maintenance behavior, including self-preening, preening, nestlings, allow-preening, and maintaining their nest decreased by 30% in response to hikers. Of course, this is not an area that we are interested in. However, let's say somebody is now quoting from this. So version A is the amount of time female owls dedicated to maintain their nest. Self-preening, allow-preening, and preening nestlings went down by 30% due to hikers. And of course, the reference is given. The second version is one study found that the presence of hikers in the region reduced female owls' nest maintenance behaviors and preening by approximately 30%. Right. Now, one of these versions is actually would be counted as plagiarism. You might say, hang on, how can that be? Because the reference is given. Even if you give the reference, if you use the same words almost as the original author, that would be counting as plagiarism. Now, B, you would note the language is different. The reference is given, so that would not count as plagiarism. Okay. Just another example. Well, I think you don't know this. You think that if you give the reference, it's okay to give the same words as the author. If you are quoting word to word, then it's a different matter. Then, of course, you give inverted commas, and normally the APA guidelines would say don't quote more than 40 words from an author. But I mean, that's an arbitrary thing, but more than 40 would be considered rather unethical. Well, okay, same thing again. One is a plagiarism, one would count as a plagiarism, other one would be okay. So A would be okay, B would be not okay, because we are using the same words or language as the author. Even if you give the reference, that will still not be okay. Okay, so that's the important point. There are some other examples I'm going to skip through because of the lack of time. And finally, we come to an important thing called effect, how to write a summary. Now, this would be important when you're presenting, for example, a case discussion, for example, in a journal club. So there are certain rules you have to follow when you are presenting a journal club where you're summarizing another person's work. It's not essay, but it's a kind of different writing. So let's.
In academic writing, you often use scholarly sources such as journal articles to support the arguments and evidence that you present in your body paragraphs. To write effectively, you need to be able to summarize the main points of an author's work, but using your own words. A good summary is like a snapshot of the original author's work. This will include things like who or what is being studied, key findings, and any relevant limitations. A good summary must be concise, conveying only the main ideas of the original source and leaving out any unnecessary details. So how do you actually go about this? Let's take a look at an example. Here's a 2019 article by Freeman and Lee, which looked at 6 international students attending a particular university. In a moment, you'll be able to pause the video to read it properly. If you don't understand everything you read, don't worry. It is very common for journal articles to contain terminology that is relevant to their discipline. Try to focus on the main ideas and think about how those can be put into simpler language. Pause the video now and read the text on the screen. We'll then take a look at how we would summarize this information. First, who or what is being studied? International students. Next, what are the main findings of the article? Students who attended university pathway courses felt prepared for university study, and the courses helped students to develop a new academic identity. And third, what limitations may be present? Well, only 6 people were sampled, and they all came from the same university. After collecting this information, we need to ensure that our summary is in the appropriate tone expected in academic writing. This doesn't necessarily mean using big words. It just means using language that is appropriate to the field of study. One simple way to do this is to find the key words and phrases that are used in the article that you're trying to summarize and including those or similar version of them in your summary. So, your final summary may look something like this. According to research done by Freeman and Lee 2019, international students believe that college pathway courses helped them prepare for their future university study. These courses may help students as they reconstruct their academic identity in their new learning environment. However, the study was limited to only 6 participants at one university. Further research is required to confirm its findings in other contexts. Have a go at some of the exercises in this module to help you improve your summarizing skills.
Okay, so that's another skill you have to develop, summarizing. And our journal clubs are a good forum for that development of such skills. So I'm sure all of you all have journal clubs. So just try to follow these few simple steps. Yeah, use your own words. Who or what is being studied, key findings, limitations. Must be concise, leave out unnecessary details. Okay, I mean, it's easy to just look at these, but not so easy to do actually. Right, okay. And the final thing, when you have done an essay or a piece of work, is to review, okay? You can't just submit a piece of work. You have to always, in fact, the reviewing might take longer than the writing actually. Right, there are 2 things you have to do when you are reviewing. One is called editing, the second one is called proofreading. They are not the same. Editing is looking at the bigger picture and adjusting the elements and the structure and the style. And the proofreading is obviously what we know as the checking the speller and the grammar, right? Okay. Right, so when editing, we look at 4 things. Firstly, we look at the content. Is everything relevant? How are the sentences and paragraphs structured? Are they in the normal academic order? Is it clear? Have we used the words correctly without jargon, and have we communicated our ideas very clearly to the reader? And last of all, the style. Is it in academic tone, not in loose tones, like, you know, is it formal, unemotional, balanced language? Okay, so these are the 4 things we look at when you are editing. Right. I've actually skipped through. Okay, we'll have a listen.
We are going to look now at editing and proofreading. Many people use these two terms interchangeably, but they mean different things in the context of writing an assignment. In this video, we will look at editing, and in the next video, we will look at proofreading. Editing refers to the process of reading and rereading your draft in order to check the content, structure, clarity, and style of your work are correct. Firstly, content. When editing for content, you need to check whether you have actually answered the questions or problems that was assigned on the task sheet. You also need to check your claims for accuracy and whether your claims are too strongly stated or maybe too weakly stated. You also check to ensure that you have provided enough evidence for the claims that you are trying to make, or whether it might be too easy for another person to criticize your claims based on how you have presented them. Secondly, you edit for structure. When editing for structure, check whether you have properly introduced the topic and whether your conclusion really finishes off the writing properly. Most importantly, does the writing flow well from sections to section, or is it confusing to read? Is the structure clear, both within and across paragraphs? Is there a paragraph that is perhaps missing the point? Ask yourself, does this make sense, or do I get lost somewhere? If it seems like you have gotten lost, go back and try to find the sentence where you started to lose your way and revise that section. Perhaps by providing new evidence or by presenting your argument from a different perspective. Next, edit for clarity. When editing for clarity, check whether the terms and concepts you have introduced in your writing are clear and easy to understand for the potential reader. Put yourself in the reader's shoes and try to understand the writing from their perspective. Could an intelligent person be able to read and understand the paper? Better still, could your own parents read and understand the work, assuming, of course, they speak English? This is an important question to ask yourself when editing. Lastly, edit for style. Academic writing requires a specific tone that is quite different to that of other writing. When editing, paying attention to the feel and tone of your writing is a crucial consideration. An inappropriate tone may lead to receiving fewer marks for your assessment. It is important for you to develop appropriate strategies for editing for content, structure, clarity, and style. All of these editing strategies can bring significant improvement to the quality and grade of your final assignment.
Okay, and the last bit is proofreading, of course, spelling, grammar, punctuation, formatting, citations, references. I'm not going to go into this in detail because I think the time is kind of going, so I will kind of skip through these. I think you can do this on your own. So proofreading, right? Okay. Okay, here we are coming to the almost then. Then just to summarize, these are the things we went through in this short period of time. We discussed what an argumentative academic essay is. We talked about writing clear sentences, clear paragraphs. We talked about choosing essay topics and thesis statements, constructing an essay, the Peel method, a little bit on beginning and ending an essay. What do you mean by academic language? Metadiscourse, how to formulate a corpus query, referencing, writing a summary, editing, and proofreading. Right. So these are the skills you would need to master if you are going to be an academic writer of excellence. And of course, all these things I did not produce myself. I took this from, right, I would recommend actually you go to these sites and have a look. The first two, you can, this is all free, okay, free of charge, you don't have to pay anything. Grammar Monster and English Grammar Revolution, marvelous sites for learning grammar. And actually, I have gone through this many times and learned a lot myself. The courses and the videos I played were from free courses offered by edX.org. And it's based in Berkeley, University of Berkeley. USA, but and I've got information from these two courses, academic English and how to write an essay. You can go to this site and register, and they will give you 1 month to go through the course, okay? And in 1 month, it will close, but you don't have to pay. It's free of charge. However, if you want a certificate, you have to pay. Right. So most of the material I took for everything, most of it came from these references. So I would urge you, everybody, to actually go and have a look. I mean, it's never too late to learn. I mean, still I'm learning. And I learned a lot just by preparing for this lecture. In fact, I had never heard of corpus and Metadiscourse until I started researching for this lecture. So I'll be using those things as well, okay? Right, so I am done. Thank you for listening. Over to Chamara.
Yeah, right, thank you very much, sir. That was very interesting, and you gave a sort of a unique perspective as to essay writing, and I think I personally, or maybe a lot of us, do go through trainees' essays, and we tend to get caught up in the psychiatry aspect of it, but you brought a very important aspect of looking at how the basic structure should be. And I haven't heard some of these terms you have said before. Just for, I notice, I won't ask trainees to speak. I would like them to speak, but usually sometimes they don't speak. I'd like to maybe to get an opinion of a trainer as to what you said, and also what they find is the most difficult, most common problem they find in essays. So I notice Dr. Ginige here, who is and sets questions and examines essays. And I wonder what she identifies as the main problem, and what Professor Hanwella's opinion would be on how trainees can improve that aspect. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Chamara, and thank you, sir. It was, as expected, of course, very enlightening, and I was learning too. Thank you. I think sir pitched at a very higher level. As trainers, I think most of my colleagues would agree. I think our main challenge is reading the handwriting, as sir also said. That will be one of the major challenges. Right. Now, most of us here are, using English as a second language. So I think MD is not the place where you, improve your language skills. You learn English. This is not the place. I think, we have the disadvantage of sometimes thinking in Sinhala or Tamil and, trying to put it in English. Sir covered most of the bases, including grammar and, all these wonderful sites that we can use for free. So apart from that, very simple basic things that I was thinking to myself when I was correcting papers and setting questions and stuff is like, mainly correcting your case histories, some of the case histories. I was thinking, people should read in English, listen to in English, talk in English, and write in English, right? Then only it becomes your second nature. Unfortunately, more than what we want to admit, psychiatry is a lot about, the language skills too, other than the subject matter and the skills and everything. If you have the advantage of having a good command of the English language, you obviously start at a higher level. That is unfortunate, but then, well, that's it. That's a fact. So over the training years, I mean, we all do our MBBS in English. So we don't have to start from A or zero. But then it's a bit unfortunate when you read some of the answer scripts, like we get basic statements like, mostly the answers are, in some candidates, this thing is bad, this is good, that is bad, this is good, that type of English. I mean, that is a bit sad. I think you all are very intelligent people. You have got through these selection exams. You have the MBBS more than anything. So I think you can put some effort in improving your English language. And when it comes to case history writing, so I don't know whether you will agree with me. I find this Google Docs helpful because it kind of correct our English and grammar and simplifies sentences. When I was listening to you about how to simplify, not to use past participles but use active, Google Docs kind of direct us. And when I was bombarded with 8 case histories from our last batch of trainees at once, I was so frustrated to see, I had to go and correct these was and these, those things, basics. So I then actually gave them a blanket order. Okay, you guys first get your case histories as a Google Doc, then get at least the Google Doc, correct the histories for me, your English, then I can look at the content, the site content. I don't know whether you'll agree with me, sir. That's about it. I have to tell.
Okay. Well, agreeing yes and no, but this concept that, okay, it's our second language and therefore we are at a permanent disadvantage is something we should not subscribe to. I mean, you can, for example, the video I started with, that was W. Dharanayake, and he went to Richmond College School and then to St. Thomas's. Of course, the education was at a very high level those days. And his predecessor, who was assassinated, this W.R.D. Bandaranaike, he went to St. Thomas's College, but then I don't know whether you know that he became second in the British Empire in the SSC. It was called the Cambridge Senior those days. And he offered English, French, Greek, and Latin. Okay. And second in the British Commonwealth, that is, he beat all the Suddhas. Learning in Sri Lanka. Of course, he went to Oxford. And of course, you may not also know that Ronnie Dimmer, one of our former foreign ministers, the finance minister, he became first in the British Empire from college in the Cambridge Senior.
I said,
yes.
But as they like thinking in English, reading in English, listening to English.
Correct. But yes. So, and of course, having said that, even Professor Colin Gunaratne used to tell me that when he went to Royal College from Prince of Wales, he didn't know very much English, and he was actually looked down upon by the English-speaking elite of Royal College. And he was determined to beat all these fellows and become first in a few more years. He went at grade 5 or something like that. And he did. He beat all of them in English in a few years. And of course, he is much better in his English than most Englishmen, I would think. So it's possible with a bit of dedication and application to improve. So don't be in this nihilistic attitude of, "Ayyo, Mahindra is done." I mean, you can learn. So just for a start, yes. And it's not easy, but of course, Google Doc and there are AIs that like Grammarly and which will help you in your style. Automatically, it will tell you where your style is wrong. But the problem with that is then you won't learn the basics, You will rely on the AI to do the job for you, and they are never perfect. I mean, however intelligent the software is, it cannot compensate. The language is a style and art. So that's something you learn by practice. So practice, practice, practice. So what I suggest is that all of your start reading, writing, writing, not a club, but an academic forum at least once a month or at least once in 2 months, where the trainees submit their essays on any topic. They can write even on politics, and then you all have a look at it and then have a discussion. Half an hour, once a month, once in 2 months.
One of us, sir. Yeah, they can give.
Yeah, they can. I mean, you can't have one big forum, but I would suggest local forums. So maybe one in Peradeniya, one in Colombo, one in Ragama, like that, And then I think in a year's time we'll have a much better writing in English, I'm sure. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they are all very bright people. Otherwise, they won't be in the postgraduate. So English is. compared
to enter medical college itself, you have to be bright, but unfortunately, we don't give that English education nowadays. That's the problem. Yeah, and without English, you are lost in this modern world. I mean, you need to be good. Yeah, so anyway.
Thank you very much. I wonder whether anyone else or specifically the trainees have anything to ask and to clarify any doubts you all have. I know it's a difficult time sitting for this exam.
Yeah, I know. Zooms are rather threatening. They get a bit nervous, but they rely on the chat. But anyway, right. Yeah, I suppose they want to go back to their Sunday work. Anyway.
Right, sir. So if anyone has any questions, you still can ask, but if not, I'd like to thank, anybody?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes. So I'm Dr. Kirti. I'm a second year registrar, sir.
Yeah, Kirti.
I'm working, yes. So I just, it's a very amazing lecture, sir. Thank you very much. First. Then, sir, since we are preparing mainly for the exam, sir.
Yeah.
So in the exam point of view, sir, is it possible for you to give a small outline how the marks dedication will be done for each part of an essay, for an example, for giving evidence or coding relevant resources, considering ethical considerations like
right.
that?
Now, Kirti, that I won't be able to do really because I have not marked the long essay as such. Okay. Funnily enough, I never got the opportunity to mark this long essay, though I have set the questions I never marked. However, so I don't know whether you all actually give a marking scheme as such, the examiner. That's something I suppose maybe confidential. However, I think the overall mark is what is given. So basically, we mark this out of 100, and then the PJAM will convert it into whatever the percentage. So don't worry about that too much. Just now, what you have to do for the essay is what we call the argumentative academic essay. Okay, that's the one that you have to concentrate on. So choose an essay topic that will give you the opportunity to demonstrate your skills in writing an academic argumentative essay. And then, of course, you would need to have the knowledge to answer that particular area. Of course, that you have to study. That is the theory knowledge, where these are not open book exams, like where you're allowed to bring your textbooks. There are some universities where they will give you can bring any textbook you like, basically, and then it's called open book exams, but these are closed. So you have to carry the knowledge in your head, and you cannot access the internet for the purpose of your essay. That's not allowed. So that's the limitation. So concentrate on writing argumentative academic essays. So just get any topic you like and write, and then get your trainer to comment and give a feedback. That's very important. You can do it on your own. But I strongly suggest that actually you do the 2 courses which I gave you. Okay, it won't take much of your time. And if all of you all do the 2 courses, it will take you 2 weeks to do it. That's it, maybe 3 weeks. And then you will find you have improved quite a bit. In life, what you need is focus practice. Simply practicing is not enough. It's like the 100 schizophrenia patients with schizophrenia. Doesn't do you any good at all. You need guided focus practice. Okay, not just repetition of the same old thing without feedback. That doesn't work. Okay, right. So you must have a teacher, you must have a good source of practice, and you must practice 3 things. Without the 3, you cannot improve. So make sure you get those 3. Okay, right. That's my advice.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Kip.
Is there anyone else who'd like to clarify anything? Any third years? I wonder how you all feel.
Yeah, anybody wants any particular advice, you can always email me. I'm okay. Free to answer. If you email me and ask, I will reply. Okay. Right.
I replied the email we sent, so you can find it.
Yeah. It's available. You can send to my academic email. Yes.
I know it must be getting late in Australia. So once again, on behalf of the college, thank you very much, sir. It was a very enlightening and a very different experience to what we normally get. And I'm sure the trainees got a lot out of it, and we did too as examiners. So thank you very much. And if I'm not mistaken, sir, you'll be doing a if I'm not putting you on the spot, you'll be doing something on the clinicals closer to the exam as well, isn't it?
Yeah, Chamar, I'm happy to do even anything else that you want me to do. I'm okay. Okay, I'm reasonably free to do. I'm on sabbatical, so I'm okay. Just tell me, I'm happy to do it. Okay, right.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.